What's up, everybody? 3 episodes in 4 days. Who's luckier than you? Who's luckier than you? It's a great title. Star 101, like a college course, right? Like Psychology 101, Star 101, a course on manipulation. But of course, you guys all know Star 101. That's the Jordan card. So let's get into it. Let's talk. But first, this episode is brought to you free by Bleecker Trading and possibly a couple other ones in the works. People like my idea. So, it's like Prestige Worldwide. Investors, possibly you. And on to the episode. You ready for this? Because I'm having some fun. Guys, there are articles, there are posts, there are all kinds of craziness about how the Star 101 card is finally recognized as the true Jordan rookie card. And that's the reason that it's flying. That's the reason that it has literally doubled in price over the last month and a half. A card that was available for less than $100,000 at the end of 2023, a PSA 8 version of it is now worth $244,000, and people who didn't even sell the card are celebrating. I can't tell you how many times yesterday I got a message from a follower saying, wow, did you see Jeff Wilson? He sold his card. He paid $100,000 and he sold his card for $244,000. No, he didn't sell it. Please take a look at the comments in his post. It was, I don't want to say misleading, but, he's saying, look, I made this money, or look, what a profit I made, or celebrate my win. It's not a win. It's sort of unrealized gains, right? And I wrote in the comments, hey, imagine everybody celebrated owning a PSA 10 86 Fleer when that one sold for $720,000. When that happened, they started coming right back down. And now they're in the hundreds again, not 700, not 500, not 400. And he makes it clear in his response to me that he didn't sell it, and that people should give him, shouldn't give him such a hard time about his quote losses, because he never sold any of them either. It's a little different, but what's funny about it is I only bring up Jeff because there is so much attention being paid to the Star Jordan now, and I wanted to kind of dissect it a little bit. AIH uses the word hanky panky. I say manipulation in the title. I'm not saying any of that's going on, right? But let's talk about some facts. Let's talk about some data points, and let's talk about why this hobby is a space where price fluctuation, I'll call it that, is something you have to pay attention to. Okay. I love the Star Jordan. Let's start off with that, because there are going to be people who oh, you hate, you're a Jordan Fleer guy. Yes, I own the PSA 10 Jordan. I also own the BGS 8.5 of the Star. And if you go back almost 5 years ago, you'll see a video of me on Slab Stocks podcast talking about why the Star card is the one to mortgage a house for, why it's the rare one, why in the high grade it is the one to go after, and you name it. And that was, when I bought my BGS 8.5, I paid $8,000 for it, guys. So keep in mind what we're talking about price-wise. Anyway, so I'm not coming at this from a Star 101 hater. I think both the Fleer and the Star have their good points. I think the Star is ugly. I think it's a rookie year card. So, it's got that going for it. But, it's a picture of him, after getting a rebound. It's blurry. It's ugly. It's got an ugly back. The 86 Fleer, while it is a, quote unquote third year card, it's manufactured by a legitimate manufacturer that's been around for a long time, was pack inserted, and holds one of the most iconic images of all time. You could compare them to the 51 Bowman and the 52 Mantle if you like. Each one has its great points, and I like the card. But why would a PSA 8 go from, let's just say, $100,000 6 months ago? Call it $125,000 6 months ago to nearly $500,000 a few months later. The people who own lower grades of the cards, the ones who have been in my DMs for the last 48 hours, will say it's because the card is awesome and it's rare. It's a rare card in any grade. And that's the scary part, guys, because what I want to get across here, the majority of my listeners who are going to listen to this and actually take heed are not going to be the ones who are going out there to look for a PSA 9 or a PSA 8 of this card. But what happens when a huge announcement like this is made that a PSA 8 is worth $250,000 now? Because that's what happens, right? One sale, one data point in this world. Now a PSA 8 is worth that. Jeff Wilson is saying his is worth that because that's a win for him. Everyone is saying it's worth that. Well, the trickle down, sort of like what we used to call the Band-Aid effect, the rubber band effect that pulls it up, is all of the other lower grades start to see price increases. You see people start to raise their price for this because the common man, the people listening to this right now, the people who are watching this right now say, you know what? I can't afford an 8. So let me go for a 4 or a 6 or a 3. And you'll notice that even the 3 sold for record price, the 7 sold for record price, the 6 sold for record price. The people paying the crazy money for the 3s and the 4s and the BGS 6s and the BGS, whatever grades they are, those are the people I want to listen to this. People who are thinking to themselves, wow, I got to go get one and I can't afford these anymore, so let me go get this. Okay, let's talk. Let's talk about the 244 data point. Let's talk about that for a second, okay? I am not saying there's anything crazy going on about that sale. Golden posted it. They posted it a day after the sale. I'm not quite sure it was paid for yet. And we're going to talk about different options about that card. But let's just go through some fun stuff. It's very possible that somebody who owns other Star Jordan cards in high grades bid that up and with no intention of paying it. Very possible. Entirely possible. I don't think Golden will take that lightly, and that person may find themselves in some hot water with Golden if they just don't pay. And if Card Ladder and Golden and Market Movers and everybody does the right thing, if it comes out that it wasn't paid for, that becomes one of those data points that doesn't hold much water. But it's already out there in the ether, right? It's already out there. It's already posted. Golden's posted it. Card Ladder's posted it. The world now thinks a PSA 8 is worth $250,000. So on eBay, on other places, on other auction houses, the trickle effect over the next couple of weeks is people are going to necessarily be looking for that card in a lower grade because of this. And if the person who won that card does happen to have a 7 or an 8 or a 6 or whatever it is, which I'm betting they do, but if that's the case, that person can now move their cards for a higher price based on this comp, based on this one sale that in option 1, they have no intention of paying for themselves. No, I don't know who bought the card. I don't know who sold the card. And right now I have no data point or anything to say that it's manipulated or not paid for. I'm just telling you one option is somebody who was out there said, you know what? I want to sell my cards. I'm going to create this comp with no intention of paying for it. It's a possibility. I'm going to go through some other possibilities, okay, just so you understand what the exercise we're doing here. Now, is that likely? No. It can happen. It's $250,000. But if somebody's planning on not paying for that card, it doesn't matter, right? Whether it's $250,000 or not, they'll come what may. They'll deal with whatever the problems are. Now, you're sitting there saying that's ridiculous. It was a bid. It's an auction house. Okay, all right, perfectly fine. You could be right. You could be right. That might not be what happens, but let's go to option number 2. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't take much to actually accomplish something like this. What if there are 2 people who own a couple of these Jordan 8s? And one says to the other, I'm going to put it up for sale on Golden. I got to deal with Golden where I put these cards up like this where it's, $250,000 card's going to sell. They only take 5% from me. Trust me, there are deals like that. I had a deal very similar to that with Golden myself when I was selling with them. And these 2 people get together, they're friends, they're buddies, and they say, all right, you're going to bid it up. We both own Star cards right now. We both own Star 8s. But our Star 8s are worth $125 each. If we bid this card up to $250 and pay for it, we now establish a $250 price for this card. We have to pay, but I'm going to pay you the $250 minus $10,000 that goes to Golden for hosting this auction. One friend pays the other. He pays them right back. The 2 of them share and share alike. It costs them $10,000 to have a transaction that is now validated by an auction house and a price point that's now out there at $250,000 on a card that previously was, let's say, $125,000. You say, why would you do that? You lost 10 grand. Okay. Well, that cost split between the two of them is $5,000, but now their 8s, which were 125, have a value of 250. They've increased on paper, as Jeff Wilson showed you. It's a win, even though it's just on paper. They've each spent $5 grand to increase their $125,000 card to $250,000. Now, maybe they put it up and sell it for $200,000. And somebody feels like they got a bargain because the one on Golden just sold for $244. I picked mine up for $200 or $205. Easily taking care of that $5 or $10 grand that it cost them to have that comp out there in the space. Not saying that happened. Just want to point out how easy it is for something like that to happen. Option 1, option 2. How about option 3? Nothing nefarious at all. The winner of the card owns several star cards. My hypothetical. Owns another 8. Owns a 7. Possibly. I don't know. Seriously, no idea. I don't know who won the card. Golden didn't announce who won the card. I don't know who sold the card. But this happens. All right? I'm not saying it happened here, but I want you to understand how it can happen. A person is sitting with a PSA 8 and a PSA 7, and they're trying to sell them, but they're not getting the price they want. Let's say prior to this sale, the 8 is 125 and the 7 is 50. All right? That's $175,000 they have into it. He's following me with the math? They have an 8 and they have a 7. 125, 50, 175 total invested in those two. They go out and they buy this one and they bid it up. And they continue to bid it up and they bid it up to $250,000. And they pay for it. What they're doing is they're protecting their investment. In this one, you might even say inflating their investment. Because they actually pay $250 for the card. Why would they do that if they're inflating the market and the card's not really worth this? Well, think about that for a second. Because now they have 2 8s and a 7. Previously, they had a 7 worth 50 and an 8 worth 125. That's 175. Now they have, so they 175 and now they've paid 250. So what's 175 and 250? That's 425. That means the cost to them of those 3 is 425 for 2 8s and a 7. But they just made the 8 worth 250. So it cost them 425 to own these 3, but they've made the 8s 250, 250. That's 500. And they've increased the value of the 7 from $50 to $100,000. So now their 3 cards are worth $600. They sell them at a little bit of a discount. They get $550 for them, and boom, they've moved everything for more money. I'm not saying that that's what happened here, okay? But I'm saying that is a reason why you might see these wild fluctuations in the price. And the more important part is this may not even be what's going on here. I may be completely off base. This may be the most natural progression in the world. Even though the star cards have been around literally for 40 years, people are just finally discovering them. Even though PSA started grading them 2 years ago. And BGS has graded 1,000 graded copies of them. The print numbers are anywhere from 3,500, 5,000. If you don't count the second printing they did in the 90s. And you believe that the grading companies can actually tell the difference. And you ignore the fact that the printing plate for this card is actually sitting on eBay right now. You want to ignore all that and everything I just told you? Great. It's the most natural thing in the world. The card has doubled in price in a couple of months. It's difficult to ignore, though, because the BGS 8.5 is a card that I know well. Let me show you a chart of the BGS 8.5, okay? Because I think it's a pretty instructive graph. Here's a card ladder graph. You guys see that? Spike, flat, 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 spike, flat, spike. Go ahead and look it up on Card Ladder, guys. That's the BGS from January 2020 to now, the BGS 8.5. It spiked up in 2021 to almost $80,000 and came right back down. You see the spike, and then it falls, all the sales after the spike, you have one big jump and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sales all the way down from 80 to 30. That's what I'm fearful of. Not just in the BGS 8.5 space, but in all the spaces. You see the spike, and then the next sale for all the lower grade spikes, and it wasn't a natural spike. So each one sells for less and less and less. And then you see for a year, it stays range bound in that all of these sales, a dozen sales in the same range between 35 and 40. And then boom, out of nowhere, 2022, you get a spike in price to 70,000. And what do you think happens right after that? More sales all the way down, all the way back down into the 20s. And then it spends another year range bound until boom, what do we see now? A spike in the chart on that BGS 8.5. What do you think is going to happen next, guys? You're going to see it ride down. And here is a very instructive thing. Let's look at that BGS 8.5. Okay? I want you guys to look at this slab. There's a nice BGS 8.5. This card sold on Fanatics Marketplace, THWC. Interesting, right? It sold, you ready? Just so I have my data right here. On August 3rd for $45,000. August 3rd for $45,000. Not a bad price. Then the same slab sold on August 17th, 2 weeks later. I mean, it's hard to even get the card out of the vault in that amount of time, right? But let's just say it stayed in the vault. But somebody paid $45,000 on August 3rd for that slab. The same slab now, 2 weeks later, August 17th, sells for $55,000. Possible. Then 2 days later, the same slab, we're talking about the same cert, on August 19th, sold for $65,500. So you tell me how a card goes on August 3rd, selling for $45,000, to August 17th, selling for $55,000, to then August 19th, selling for $65,500. The exact same slab. Is it possible that that card has been flipped 3 different times, going up 50% in value since August 3rd, between August 3rd and August 19th? A 16-day period selling to 3 different people? Is that possible? Sure, entirely possible. Is it something I want you to be aware of so that you can have all of the data points out there before you go running and screaming from the rooftops that the Star 101 is the greatest card and I need to have a copy? Yes, I want to make sure you know about this. I want to make sure you know about how easy it is to create data points in this space. How easy it is to, even if you're not doing anything wrong, to protect your investment, to protect a corner of the market, to say, you know what, I'm not going to let a card fall below this price. If you happen to own 10% of the Jordan 10s and one comes up for sale and you don't want it to end below what you think it's worth, and you have the money and the means, you make sure you keep buying them. It's how somebody ends up with 30 of those. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have conviction and money and you believe that a card is worth that and you want to buy every one that comes up for that price, more power to you. That's perfectly fine. With the Star at the moment, especially the PSA graded ones, a lot of the BGS ones haven't crossed over yet. So the pop is light. So you have this interesting scenario that of all the great reporting yesterday, of all the great quotes that they had out there, collected an article on it where they quoted P. Ryan and Dave, who owns 2 of the 3 PSA 9s, and they quoted Adam, who is now, you know, an expert in the stuff and cheerleading, and they hold the great quotes. And, you know, they had some stuff in the article about, hey, you know, I mean, Dave, he was real about it. I mean, even though he owns the cards and is a big cheerleader, I mean, he said the card's been around for a long time. You know, it's very possible this is not the most natural thing in the world. That's fine. Read the article. But you know what was missing from the article? Any of what I'm talking about. It's interesting, right? Because what I'm concerned about is you woke up yesterday, or you wake up today and say, you know what? The Star Jordan card is one I want to have. But you missed the point that right now, PSA's only grade 300 and change of these. We haven't seen the massive crossover. If you look on eBay right now, there's a ton of BGS ones that people are trying to sell in their BGS slabs. When those BGSs cross over, they're probably not going to cross over to a similar PSA grade. If there's any white on the edges, PSA grades it real hard. Even my BGS 8.5 had some white on the edges. Great centering, but had some white on the edges, and I'm sure it would have been dropped down probably to a 7 if it was crossed over to PSA. But what you have here is that perfect scenario where the PSA versions especially, it's not that there's a premium because PSA is grading them. There is a scarcity now to the PSA slabs because not all of the BGS have crossed over. Not all of the ones that are in team bags have been graded by PSA. It looks rarer than it is. Is it a rare card? Sure, especially by comparison to the 86 Fleer. Is it rare by rare standards in the hobby? No. Just look on eBay. I posted yesterday in my story. There were like 27 of them available for sale on eBay. Is it rare in 9? Hell yeah. I mean, there's 3 of them. Is it rare in high grade? Sure. You know, is it harder to try to do this cornering and manipulating on a PSA 9 that's going to cost millions of dollars? Definitely. I guess my point is you're probably going to see more 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s show up. So when you have that combination, right, you have this interesting high end. I would be nervous about stepping in now and trying to buy a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a BGS 6, when you know that what's going to probably happen is you're going to see more of those come in, and you're not going to have anybody trying to defend the pricing on the 4s, the 5s, the 6s, and the 3s. You're not going to have that same sort of, you know, high-end protection that you might have in those high ones. It's just a data point. It's just a talking point. It's just something that I've been thinking about for a while. You know, I love that Jeff Wilson wants to go out there and say what a great win he had, and that's great. And we all want to be positive. We want to show these wins. And the Star card is a great story, and I think it's a really awesome card. And, you know, I'd love to own one in my PC. But I wanted to come on here today and spend a couple minutes to say that I'm not adding one anytime soon, because all you have to do, guys, is take a look at the BGS 8.5 card ladder chart. It's the most instructive graph that you can see. Take a look at it, please. It has spiked 3 times in the last 3 years, the same type of spike. I'm not telling you that history always repeats itself. What I am telling you is that history rhymes. So just be mindful of that, right? Just be mindful of every time it spikes, it comes down. Doesn't mean it's going to come down now. But just take a look at the data that's available before you go and jump on something based on excitement or whatever it is that's going on now. Brought to you by Bleecker and possibly you. Talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody.